All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of, trash, I guess you could say. Or more specifically, we'll be looking at GFL Environmental.
Okay.
A company that's been making some, let's just say interesting financial moves.
Yeah, they've been pretty active.
Yeah. So we're here to see if their strategy is, is it going to work?
Right.
Is this a company that's on the path to success, or is it all just a bunch of garbage?
Lots of puns today.
You know me, I can't help myself. Our source material for this deep dive is a document that outlines GFL's key themes.
Okay.
And it also has some evidence to support their trash to treasure plan, I guess you could call it.
All right, I like that trash to treasure.
So to kick things off, GFL just sold their environmental services division.
Yes, and they got a cool $5.59 billion for it.
Wow, $5.59 billion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dough.
Yeah.
So what are they doing with all that cash?
Well, a big chunk of it's going towards paying down debt.
Oh, okay, so they're being responsive.
Yeah, it seems like they're planning to pay down $3.75 billion, which will save them about $200 million each year in interest payments.
Wow, $200 million. That's not chump change. That's a lot of money.
It is for sure.
So what does this mean for their future? Like, does this free up more money to invest in other things?
Well, yeah, definitely. It improves their financial stability, right? Like, just by getting rid of that debt hanging over their heads.
Makes sense.
And it also could potentially boost their credit rating.
Oh,
They're actually aiming to reach an investment grade rating.
oh, wow. So it's like leveling up in the finance world.
Exactly. And that would give them access to even better financing options in the future.
Interesting. So it's like they're laying the foundation for some serious growth in the future.
Yeah, they are setting themselves up for success.
So debt reduction, that's one thing they're doing. But they're also doing this share buyback program, right?
Yes, that's right. They've approved a $2.25 billion share repurchase program.
Okay. And what does that even mean?
So basically, they're buying back their own shares from the market. It shows they're confident in their future, and it could actually increase the value of the remaining shares.
Oh, so the shares that are still out there could become more valuable.
Right.
Got it. So it's like a way to give back to their investors.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing both offense and defense here.
Okay, I like it.
Reducing debt on one hand and rewarding their shareholders on the other.
Smart. But with all this financial stuff going on, what about their actual business? You know, the waste management part of things.
Yeah, that's where it gets even more interesting. So while they're making these big financial moves, they're also doubling down on their core business.
Okay, so it's back to basics.
Exactly. They're focusing on what they know best. Solid waste operations.
So are they just sticking with what they already do, or are they looking to expand?
Well, they're doing both. Actually, they're looking at making more acquisitions, specifically in the solid waste sector.
So they want to buy up other companies.
Yeah, they're calling them strategic and accretive acquisitions.
So basically they want to buy up more companies and become even bigger.
Yeah, but it's got to be strategic.
Right. They don't want to just buy anything.
It's like a game of Monopoly, but with garbage trucks instead of hotels.
I like that analogy. So are they seeing any positive results from all of this? Like, is this actually working?
It seems like it. Their Q3 2024 revenue jumped to $5.87 billion.
Whoa. That's a huge jump.
It is, up from $5.63 billion the year before.
So they're not just talking the talk, they're actually walking the walk.
Yeah, exactly. Their actions are matching their words.
That's great. What about profits? Are their margins improving too?
Yes, they're actually focusing a lot on operating cost efficiencies.
So basically trying to cut costs.
Yeah, and using their size to get better deals and boost those profit margins.
Okay, so like economies of scale kind of thing.
Exactly. The bigger they are, the more leverage they have.
Right. It's like buying in bulk at Costco. You get a better price.
Exactly. They're implementing all sorts of things like pricing strategies, revenue quality initiatives, and productivity improvements.
Sounds impressive. But what does that actually mean? Like, what are they actually doing?
Well, they're looking at every part of their business, trying to find ways to save money and increase efficiency.
Okay, give me some examples.
Okay, so they're optimizing routes for their trucks.
Okay, that makes sense.
They're investing in new technology.
Like what kind of technology?
Well, things like route optimization software and even exploring things like using AI to help sort recyclables.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cutting edge stuff.
So they're not just relying on the old ways of doing things.
No, they're embracing innovation.
I like it. But let's be real here. The waste management industry, it's a tough business.
Yeah, it's super competitive.
So how does GFL stack up against the big guys?
Well, they're actually one of the major players. They've got a 6% market share in North America.
Okay, so they're not tiny.
No, not at all. They have a really strong presence in both Canada and the US.
Okay, so they're covering a lot of ground.
And they've got a lot of infrastructure too, like landfills and collection trucks and all that. And those things are hard to replicate. You can't just build a new landfill overnight.
True. There's a lot of regulations and permits and stuff.
Exactly. So that gives them a bit of an advantage over any new competition that might pop up.
So it's like a barrier to entry.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting. But then doesn't that also make it harder for GFL to expand quickly?
It can, yeah. It's a bit of a double-edged sword.
So they have to be really strategic about how they grow.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about their focus on waste management, but you also mentioned something about aligning executive interests with shareholder interests.
Right. So they've implemented these guidelines for executive compensation and share ownership.
So basically, they're making sure that the executives are invested in the success of the company.
Exactly. It's like everyone's in the same boat rowing in the same direction.
I like that analogy. So it sounds like GFL is doing a lot of things right.
They are, but even with a solid plan, there are always potential risks.
Oh, yeah, of course. What are some of the things that could trip them up?
Well, the competition's a big one. Those industry giants like WasteManagement and Republic Services, they're not going to go down without a fight.
Right, they're the big dogs.
And then there are things like rising operating costs,
Uh-huh.
fuel and labor. Those are always a concern.
Makes sense.
What else?
And then there's the whole regulatory landscape.
Okay.
The waste management industry is heavily regulated, so any changes in those rules could impact their business.
So they got to be able to adapt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the economic climate.
Right. A recession could hurt them.
Potentially, yeah, if businesses and cities start cutting back on their spending.
Makes sense.
And we can't forget about climate change.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
There's increasing pressure on the industry to be more sustainable.
So they need to be environmentally conscious.
For sure.
So basically, they've got a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it's a complex landscape.
But it sounds like they're at least aware of these challenges.
They seem to be, and they're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Good. So they're not just burying their heads in the sand. No, they're facing them head on.
I like it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about their strategy, their competition, and the potential risks. What about their actual financial performance?
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Let's take a look at their numbers and see if they support all these ambitious plans.
All right, let's do it.
We were just talking about GFL trying to reach that investment grade status, but you mentioned that they face some pretty stiff competition.
Oh, yeah.
So let's unpack that a bit more.
Sure. So GFL, yeah, they've carved out a decent chunk of the market.
Right.
But they're not alone. They're going up against some real heavyweights.
Like, who are we talking about?
Okay, so the main ones are Waste Management
Okay.
and Republic Services.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, those are the big guys. Everyone knows those names,
Right.
even if you're not in the finance world.
True. So how does GFL try to stand out from those giants?
Well, they've been really focused on growth and innovation.
Okay.
So they've been buying up other companies to get bigger.
Right. We talked about that.
Yeah. But they're also investing a lot in new technology and sustainable practices.
So they're trying to be both bigger and smarter.
Exactly. It's a two-pronged approach.
Makes sense. But how much of this is real innovation and how much is just marketing hype?
That's a good question. You know, it's easy to talk about sustainability,
Right.
but are they actually walking the walk?
So what should we be looking for to see if they're actually serious about sustainability?
Well, are they investing in things like waste-to-energy technology?
Okay.
Are they improving their recycling rates? Are they actually reducing their carbon footprint?
So we need to look beyond the PR and see what they're actually doing.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
That's true. So let's zoom out for a second and think about the future of the whole waste management industry.
Okay.
What are some of the big trends that could impact GFL's future?
Well, one of the biggest things is the rise of what they call smart waste management.
Smart waste management. What does that mean?
So it's basically using technology to make everything more efficient. We're talking sensors in trash bins, optimized collection routes using AI to help sort recyclables.
Wow. So it's like the trash industry is getting a high-tech makeover.
Exactly.
But how does that actually benefit a company like GFL?
Well, think about it. If they can optimize their routes, they save money on fuel and time.
Right.
And if they can use AI to sort recyclables, they can do it faster and more accurately.
So it's all about efficiency and reducing costs.
That's a part of it.
But doesn't all this technology cost a lot of money up front?
It does. It's a big investment.
So can GFL actually afford to keep up with all these advancements? especially when they're competing with those bigger companies.
It's a valid concern. They might need to find some strategic partners or investors to help them out.
So it's not just about picking up trash anymore.
No, it's about being a tech-savvy company.
Right. They have to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
So smart waste management, that's one trend. What else is going on in the industry?
Another big one is the focus on the circular economy.
Okay, what's that?
It's all about keeping resources in use for as long as possible.
Okay.
So instead of just throwing things away, we try to reuse them or recycle them.
So it's about closing the loop.
Yeah, exactly.
How does that apply to the waste management industry?
Well, companies like GFL, they're being challenged to find ways to recover more materials from the waste stream.
Okay.
So they're investing in new recycling technologies, partnering with manufacturers to create these closed-loop systems.
So the trash becomes a resource.
Exactly. It's like turning trash into treasure.
I like it. So does this circular economy thing give GFL an advantage?
It could. Companies that can show that they're serious about sustainability will be in a good position.
Makes sense. It's not just about getting rid of trash anymore. It's about being responsible.
Right. It's about being a steward of resources.
So it's pretty cool how this industry is evolving.
Yeah, it's going through a lot of changes.
But we have to be realistic here.
Oh, yeah.
There are still some big challenges that GFL faces. We've talked about the competition and the costs and the technology, but there's also the whole issue of public perception.
Oh, right.
Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Waste management. It's not the most glamorous industry.
Not really. People think of landfills and garbage trucks.
Right. It doesn't exactly have the best image.
Yeah, so how does that affect GFL?
Well, it can make it hard to attract good employees,
Makes sense.
and it can make it hard to get communities to support their projects.
Yeah, nobody wants a landfill in their backyard.
So GFL has to do some PR work too.
Yeah, they need to be transparent about what they're doing.
Okay.
They need to engage with communities, show people that they're being responsible and sustainable.
So they need to build trust.
Exactly. They need to change the narrative.
From trash to treasure.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of the day, it all comes down to their ability to execute their plan.
Right. They've got a good strategy, but they need to be able to actually make it work.
So it's a story with a lot of potential, but also a lot of challenges.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the qualitative stuff.
Right.
Now let's get into the numbers.
Okay.
Let's see if GFL's financial performance matches their ambitions.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've talked about GFL's strategy and their competition and all the challenges they face. But now let's look at the numbers.
Okay.
Let's see if their financials back up all these big plans.
All right, so their 2023 financials show a revenue of $7.5 billion,
Okay.
adjusted EBITDA of $2 billion, and adjusted free cash flow of $701 million.
Okay, so those are some big numbers.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
But what do these numbers actually tell us? Like, beyond just how big they are.
Well, the revenue's been going up steadily year after year.
Okay.
So that suggests they're growing their business.
Makes sense.
But revenue's only part of the story.
Right.
You got to look at profitability, too.
And that's where that EBITDA number comes in.
Exactly. So that $2 billion in adjusted EBITDA, that's a good sign. It means their operations are profitable.
Okay. But we also need to look at their debt and their cash flow, right?
Absolutely. Especially since they're aiming for that investment grade rating.
Right. So they got to manage that debt.
Yep. It's all connected.
So how are they using their cash flow? You know, with that $701 million.
Well, they're putting it towards a few key things.
Okay.
Debt reduction is a big one.
Uh-huh.
They're also giving some back to shareholders through dividends and share buybacks.
Okay.
And then they're also investing in future growth.
So acquisitions and technology and all that.
Exactly. It's a balancing act.
It sounds like they're trying to do it all.
They are. It's ambitious.
It is. But let's talk about the risks for a minute.
Okay.
What are some things investors should be thinking about?
Well, we got to remember those big competitors.
Right. Waste management and Republic Services.
Yeah, we're not going away.
So GFL has to find ways to stand out.
Exactly. They got to prove they can compete.
And then there are those external factors too.
Oh, yeah. All those things we talked about.
Regulations and the economy and climate change.
It's a lot to keep track of.
So GFL has to be adaptable.
For sure. They got to be able to roll with the punches.
Okay, but stepping back for a second, what about the waste management industry overall?
It's actually a pretty good industry to be in.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. The world population is growing.
Right.
More people means more trash.
True.
So the demand for waste management services is only going to increase.
So there's job security,
You could say that.
but GFL still has to prove they're the best.
Right. Exactly. They got to convince investors that they're the ones to bet on.
So strong financials, smart decisions, and a commitment to the future.
That's the recipe for success.
Well, this has been a fascinating look at GFL Environmental.
It has been.
They're trying to change a whole industry.
And make some money along the way.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something new and interesting.
We always appreciate your time.
And remember, the world of business is always changing.
So stay curious, keep learning, and never stop exploring.